While hanging out in Italy waiting for ships to transport him and his troops to Jerusalem, King Richard found out his sister Joan was imprisoned in Sicily by some dick named Tancred, who maneuvered to take control and proclaimed himself as King of Sicily after Joan's husband William II died. Needless to say, Richard was not too happy about this.
When me brother gets here, you'll be shitting your britches, Tancred!
Ooh, I'm so scared. King Richard and his limey knights rampaged throughout the streets of Messina, terrorizing the local inhabitants, and quickly took control of the city, freed his sister Joan from prison, and forced the fake King Tancred to empty out his treasury in order to pay Richard a shitload of money to prevent him from chopping off his stupid head.
And while you're down there, wipe the old shit off me spats, mate.
Make him use his favorite hat to clean it up.
King Richard was chilling out in Messina after taking it over when his mom, Eleanor of Aquitaine, arrived there with his prearranged bride-to-be, Italian hottie Berengaria of Navarre. Even though Richard was sort of a homo when it came to sex, he fell head over spats in love with her and asked for her hand in marriage, mostly to appease his mom and add more fuel to the Angevin Plantagenet political intrigue taking place.
Oh, hello, handsome. I'm a Berengaria from Navarre.
Mamma mia, Abadanza! Me likey.
Hey, lover boy, my eyes is up here, capiche?
When King Philip II arrived in Messina to meet up with Richard and found he took over the town and proposed to Berengaria, he was super pissed off because he was related to the disposed fake King Tancred, and also because Richard was already supposed to marry his sister, Alice, but chose Berengaria instead because she had them big Italian tits.
Well, there goes another prospective husband, Alice.
Oh, boo-hoo. Maybe it's my breath, oui?
Philip got all pissy with Richard over these developments, so he rounded up the French Crusaders and set sail for the Holy Land in March 1191, leaving Richard and his troops behind in Italy. The French Crusaders landed in Tyre, and after doing a little sightseeing and visiting the gift shop, they decided to march south to join the Crusaders that were besieging Acre.
I cannot wait for this stupid English empty-handed sympathize. I fought in that direction.
Meanwhile, back in Messina, King Richard and his troops were still hanging around, enjoying the spoils of their newly conquered territory, and were in no hurry to get to Jerusalem. And besides, Richard was very busy showing off and trying to impress his gal pal Berengaria how cool he was being a king and all that. It was April 1191 when Richard finally decided to set sail for the Holy Land and get his crusade started.
We should go to France on a honeymoon. I always wanted to see Paris.
Bloody hell! Paris is full of French wankers. We're gonna go crusading on our honeymoon.
On the way to the Holy Land, Richard's fleet was hit by a violent storm, and several of his ships crash-landed on the shores of Cyprus, which was ruled by the self-proclaimed Emperor Isaac Ducas Comnenus, a total shitbag that was known as a debaucher and a sodomite to his royal family.
Ooh, look, intruders! You want me to go kill them, boss?
No, they look rich. Round them up so we can ransom them for beer money.
Isaac Ducas then made the biggest mistake of his life when he confiscated Richard's treasure ship and took all the money, and took Joan, Berengaria, and the English Crusaders on board as his prisoners, and stripped them of their clothing, weapons, and armor, and marched them through town and mocked their pale, pasty complexions.
I understand the chains, but why you make us go topless? We not get a lot of girls on this island, and I love titties.
Richard then arrived at Limassol with his remaining troops and was seriously pissed when he heard what Ducas had done. Ducas, realizing he fucked up, came to Richard and said he was just joking around and gave him back all his money, freed the girls from prison, and gave the knights back all their stuff, and even apologized for making fun of them.
I'm sorry, I'm a dickhead. I thought it was a different King Richard, not you, man.
Honest mistake. Now what am I gonna shove up your arse? Me foot, maybe?
No.
But Isaac Ducas was an arrogant prick, and suddenly got all cocky and demanded that the Latins leave his island at once, and even sent his soldiers to give them the bum's rush and kick them out. King Richard, of course, went apeshit and led his Crusaders across Cyprus, taking over town after town as he chased Ducas all over the island before finally capturing him and claiming Cyprus as his own.
Oh, come on, man. I was joking around. You like the jokes?
I love jokes. In fact, here's one. What's Greek and is gonna get his ass handed to him? You is!
No.
Richard then married Berengaria at a lavish ceremony in his newly conquered realm and decided to take her on the crusade instead of going on a real honeymoon, and finally set sail for the Holy Land in June of 1191. Richard was strapped for cash. Weddings are so expensive. So he sold Cyprus to the Knights Templar to use as their base of operations.
What's not to like, Gov? It's got great cuisine, beautiful beaches, and friendly locals. It's a bloody paradise, it is.
I don't know. It seems a bit pricey for this area.
And lo, the Third Crusade finally got going. But first, a little bit about the Outremer political intrigue going on. After Saladin conquered most of the Holy Land from the Latins, he decided to release King Guy in 1189 as a show of goodwill and to get Guy's wife Sibylla to stop bothering him. So, after being freed, Guy ran all the way to Tyre, one of the few remaining Christian strongholds in the Holy Land, and demanded to be king.
You dipshit! It's me, King Guy! Let me in for Christ's sake! I'm your king! I demand to rule you!
Freedom rock lasers! So be it, laser!
We got the new king now, so hit the road, you stupid loser.
Yeah, you Jerusalem loser! You suck!
After King Guy showed up in Tyre, Conrad of Montferrat, who held on to the city despite Saladin's relentless seizures, told Guy, sorry pal, but I'm the king around here and you're a king without a country, so bye, and wouldn't let Guy enter the city, not even just to use the bathroom. So Guy and his knights set up camp outside Tyre's walls.
Sorry, pal, but the restrooms are out of order, so...
Come on, man! I've been holding in a dump ever since we left Saladin.
King Guy was then joined by his wife, Queen Sibylla, and their 2 kids for a family camping trip outside of Tyre. But after months of sitting around doing nothing, and with camp conditions deteriorating, Guy realized he was never going to get past Tyre's walls. So he was like, screw this nonsense, and gathered up his family and loyal soldiers and marched to Acre to conquer it, so he could be king of something.
We are not stopping to get us clean!
But let's get back to the real Third Crusade, shall we? So anyhow, Guy and his loyal troops put Acre under siege. But then Saladin amassed his troops directly behind them to force them to fight on two fronts. But the Crusaders were deeply entrenched and able to repel the Muslims' attacks and keep the garrison of Acre at bay inside the city's walls.
Well, boys, looks like we is in a real pickle here now.
We got pickles? I want a pickle! I'm freaking starving!
Luckily for King Guy, the Crusaders besieging Acre were bolstered by the arrival of King Philip II and his French troops in May of 1191, and they were soon joined by Duke Leopold of Austria and the 30 or so German Crusaders that were left after their former leader Frederick of Swabia and the rest of the German soldiers died from another bout of the plague that ran through their camp and decimated their ranks.
Well, look who finally decided to show up and go crusading!
I thought you said we'd make fun of us for being late. Let's go home!
Even with their morale boosted by the new arrivals, the Crusaders couldn't break the stalemate until King Richard finally arrived in June 1191. Now shit was happening. First, the English Armada chased Saladin's supply ships from the area. Then Richard ordered his men to build huge siege engines to bombard Acre's walls and named them the Bad Neighbor and the Big Motherfucker.
Gee, don't any of you wankers have a clue how to conduct a proper siege?
King Richard then offered a nickel for every stone the miners pulled from the walls to entice them to work harder. And after a month of constant bombardment from the big catapults and the miners sapping the walls, the city of Acre fell to the Crusaders, which was mostly due to the fine leadership and military prowess of King Richard himself.
You did it, sire, and with no help from the French!
Fuck the French! And the crowds too! Long live the king!
But first, a little more ultimate political intrigue. During the siege of Acre, Guy's wife and kids got the plague and died, taking away Guy's only claim to the throne. So Conrad of Montferrat grabbed Sibylla's sister, Isabella, proclaimed her as rightful heir to Jerusalem, then forced her to divorce her husband and marry him, making him the king of Jerusalem.
Oh, give her anal, sir. So Guy has no claim to any loopholes.
What?
On top of that, there was all the Crusader political intrigue going on at Acre. After taking the city from the infidels, King Richard and King Philip II placed their banners atop the walls. But when Duke Leopold put his banner up next to theirs, Richard was like, "You grouched no shit!" and ripped the Holy Roman banner down and tossed it into the moat below.
What the fuck? Get that German shit flag out of here! I wouldn't even wipe me ass with that dirty crowd flag!
And besides all that, the divisions between the Crusade leaders was growing wider due to Richard stumping for Guy to be recognized as the true king of Jerusalem in exile, while both King Philip and Duke Leopold were pushing for Conrad to be declared king because he was related to them, and also because they were super jealous of Richard and didn't want to support anything he supported.
I will not go into the battle with him until he takes off that t-shirt!
But back to the Crusade. By August of 1191, King Philip II was in poor health and fed up with Richard showing off and boasting about how cool he was. Add to that, he had political shit to deal with back in France, so he was like, "I had enough of this crusading bullshit. I got the real king stuff to do," and went back home, where he was mocked as a pussy for leaving.
I've had enough of this crusading bullshit. I leave you with my best mates. Au revoir. Cool, blimey. These are your best I'd hate to see you west, Philly.
After Philip left, Duke Leopold was like, "Yeah, fuck Richard, and fuck this stupid crusade too!" And he took the 5 or 6 German crusaders that didn't die yet and returned home as well. King Richard was now the undisputed leader of the Third Crusade, and he was ready as fuck to kick the dirty infidels' asses and moved on to Jaffa as his next target.
Oi! Either I'm a great leader, or people love having a power-tripping egomaniac telling them what to do.
But before Richard could march out to Jaffa, he had to figure out what to do with the 3,000 or so Muslim prisoners he was still holding captive after conquering Acre. So he began negotiations with Saladin to have him pay a ransom to allow all the prisoners of war to be released unharmed.
Look at that imperialistic Frank bastard. He just wanted to take over everything and subjugate us to his whims.
Not for nothing, but ain't that exactly what Saladin's been doing?
Saladin was a shrewd motherfucker and kept stalling on the ransom payments and making excuses for the delay. But what he really wanted was to keep Richard holed up in Acre and undermine his authority by playing him as an easy-to-manipulate fool. Saladin would soon learn that Richard was many things, but he was certainly nobody's fool.
Maybe we do it tomorrow. It's one of my many kids' birthdays, and we go to Chuck E. Cheese tonight. Yeah.
By September of 1191, Richard was sick of hanging around in Acre and totally fed up with Saladin's stalling tactics. So he marched every last Muslim prisoner outside the gates of the city and killed them all in cold blood, in full view of Saladin and his Muslim army, which freaked them out.
I don't want for to be murder, Ahmed. What if the 72 virgins is virgins because they're big and fat and ugly?
Saladin was enraged after seeing his fellow Muslims being slaughtered by the Crusaders, so he ordered his troops to kill every Christian prisoner they held in retaliation. Saladin and his troops then retreated from Acre and hurried south to Jaffa, hoping to catch Richard and the Crusaders out in the open and destroy them once and for all.
So you say you have a surprise for us. Is it beer? We could use a cold one.
Let's just say that you will soon never have worry about what hat to wear.
But Richard was a savvy cat, especially militarily, and he ordered his troops to march in tight formation while hugging the coastline to prevent any attacks on his right flank, and had his fleet of ships sail alongside them as they marched to provide the Crusaders with all the food, beer, and other supplies they might have needed as they marched south.
Yo, King Dude, let's take a break from marching. Catch some bitchin' waves.
It's not a bad idea, sire. The surf is up and Charlie don't surf. Saladin and his troops stayed further inland as they followed the Crusaders and waited for an opportunity to strike them in the open. Saladin tried to break their morale and sent small bands of archers to continuously harass the Latins with barrages of arrows. But aside from some horses getting hit, it had very little effect.
What the fuck? Let me in! Open the gates! Help me, Baba Louie!
As the Crusaders neared the town of Arsuf, Saladin realized the futility of his archers' attacks, and how many arrows he was wasting. Those things are expensive. So he called for an all-out attack on the Hospitalinites that made up the rear, hoping to break their formation and defeat them in detail.
Hey! Why everyone is for to be going that way? I say attack this way!
Sorry, we thought you'd say retreat. It's kind of hard to be hearing you back here.
The Hospitallers were now marching backwards to fight off the infidels and soon began to separate from formation. The Hospitallers' leader rode up front to Richard and begged him to call for a counterattack. But Richard had a plan in place already, so he told the Hospitallers to shut up, get back in formation, and keep marching forward. The enemy is literally right freaking here. Can we attack them now?
No! Not until I listen to me Motorhead albums and get bloody pumped!
Saladin's troops were beginning to encircle the Hospitallers, so they were like, fuck this shit, and defied Richard's orders, and broke ranks, then charged full speed into their tormentors. When Richard was told of what had transpired in the rear of the column, he called for an all-out Crusader counterattack.
Fuck this shit! I'm gonna kill someone! Diane's wrong!
Why? The king said we got away! Ooh, you're gonna be in trouble!
Richard, who always led his troops front and center, was tearing through the infidels' lines and cutting them down like vile weeds. Richard was not only a great military leader, he was also courageous as hell and batshit crazy, and loved nothing more than killing people just for fun.
Alright, let's give these dirty infidel bastards what for. Hey, boys?
Can you give me 5 minutes, boss? I've really got to take a dump. The Crusaders were kicking the ever-loving shit out of the infidels now, and killed more than 5,000 of them, while only losing like 3 or 4 of their own men. When Saladin saw his brave soldiers being cut to pieces, and his chicken shit soldiers running away from battle like scared little girls, it was too much to bear. So he called for a full-on retreat and shamefully fled the battlefield.
Take that, you bloody Saracen camel humper!
I do not say that. I like that you and your horse got matching surcoats.
After Saladin's retreat, Richard's troops easily strode right into Jaffa and took control of the city in like an hour and a half. Richard then made Jaffa his new HQ in the Levant and brought the entire Palestinian coastline back in the Crusaders' hands. Saladin, who was not used to losing to Crusaders, had his back up against the wall, so he offered to negotiate a truce.
Hey, watch where you're swinging that thing. Somebody could get hurt.
Well, that's the whole bloody point!
You're not fair. You stab me in the back. You know, backstabber.
Saladin's brother, Saladin, then met with Richard in Jaffa, and they exchanged gifts and pleasantries. Richard thought Saladin was way cool and wanted him to marry his sister Joan so they could rule Jerusalem together as king and queen. But Joan wouldn't convert to Islam, and Saladin thought her legs were too skinny, so the arranged marriage was off.
Let him know that I don't cook, I don't clean, and definitely no PJs!
Aye, bloody hell, Johnny. You ain't never gonna get hitched.
I think I pass. I already got like 26 wives back home.
Well now, this is getting pretty crazy, right? 2 of history's greatest leaders, Richard the Lionheart and Saladin, locked in an epic battle, like Quisp vs. Quake, for supremacy in the Holy Land. Honestly, what could possibly go wrong? Hope you enjoyed part 2 of Holy Crap, the Third Crusade. Be sure to check out part 3 to see how this wacky episode of history pans out. All I can tell you is, hang on to your kettle hat